It was a day like any other in the heart of the city of Athens, teeming with tourists exploring its ancient ruins and monuments. Among them was a diverse group. Samuel, a British photographer obsessed with unexplored places. Mia, curious archaeology student. Enrique and Lucia, a Spanish couple in search of unusual adventures. And Patrick, their local guide. They were about to embark on a mysterious tour, promised by Patrick as a unique experience. Their destination? A network of underground tunnels recently discovered beneath the ruins, an ancient labyrinth that had supposedly never been fully mapped. Patrick, with his charismatic voice and a gaze that hid more than it revealed, promised an unforgettable journey. Little did the tourists know that this promise would turn out to be a terrifying truth. Entrance to the labyrinth was a narrow crevice, hidden between time-worn stones. Patrick led the group inside, flashlights illuminating the dark, damp path. The air was thick and cold, the smell of mold and old earth permeating the air. As they advanced, the sound of the outside world disappeared, leaving only the sound of their breathing and footsteps echoing off the stone walls. "Remember to always follow the group," Patrick warned, his voice reverberating off the walls. "This labyrinth is a treacherous place, easy to get lost in." But the initial excitement soon turned to uneasiness. As they descended, the labyrinth became more complex and sinister. The tunnels seemed endless, with curves and forks that confused any sense of direction. The walls, covered in ancient markings and almost faded engravings, suggested stories from ancient times, full of long-forgotten secrets. Samuel took photos of the sculptures of mythical creatures on the walls, while Maya studied every detail with curious eyes. Patrick, however, seemed distracted, his furtive glances indicating that he knew more than he was willing to reveal. But then, as they rounded a bend, something changed. A low, almost imperceptible sound came from the end of the tunnel, a distant whisper. They stopped, exchanging confused glances. Patrick tried to maintain his composure, but it was clear that he was also uneasy. "We should keep going," he said, trying to hide his nervousness. The group continued on, but the tension in the air became palpable. And little by little, the realization that something was not right began to take hold of them. They were not alone in this place. Something was watching them, something that knew every curve, every nook and cranny of this labyrinth. The silence became an uncomfortable companion. Flashlights wavered, casting distorted shadows on the walls, as if ancient figures were moving in the darkness. Samuel, always one step ahead, stopped to photograph a broken statue. His flash illuminated the tunnel for a brief moment, revealing a strange image in the corner of his viewfinder. A shadow that shouldn't be there. "Did you see that?" he asked, his voice shaking slightly. The others approached, but in the darkness there was nothing but rocks and moisture. Enrique, the most skeptical of the group, laughed nervously. "It must have been a play of light. Let's continue." But the feeling of being watched persisted. They walked through winding corridors and passed through large rooms where the sound of drops of water falling from ancient stalactites echoed. But with each step, the path seemed to close in on them, as if the labyrinth were alive, changing its shape. It was then that Enrique, who was walking right behind everyone, stopped to adjust his backpack. He turned to call Lucia, but she was no longer there. "Lucia?" he called, his voice echoing back without response. The group stopped, panic starting to creep in. They walked back along the path, calling for Lucia. There was no answer, only the empty sound of the maze that seemed to mock their efforts. Enrique swore she was right behind him, but it was as if she had disappeared into thin air. Patrick tried to calm them down, telling them she must have gotten lost and that they would find her soon. But there was a growing nervousness in his eyes, something he couldn't hide. "We can't split up. This place is dangerous," Mia warned, her voice shaking. The tourists kept together, advancing slowly, but now the fear was palpable. Corridors seemed narrower, the shadows thicker, and the whispers returned, louder, like muffled screams. Enrique couldn't stop looking back, as if at any moment he expected to see Lucia appear. But something inside him told him she wouldn't come back. Not while they were here. The atmosphere became unbearable. The air seemed heavier, as if the maze itself were alive and breathing. Samuel continued to photograph, now with a different purpose, to capture any evidence of what was happening there. But each flash only increased the feeling that something was moving in the shadows, always a step ahead or a whisper to the side. Patrick tried to stay in the lead, but his behavior was becoming increasingly erratic. At every turn, he stopped to look along the path, as if trying to remember something, or look for something he didn't want to find. "This place shouldn't be this complicated," Patrick said, almost to himself, his voice thick with frustration and fear. The group continued on, but with each step it became clearer that they were walking in circle. And then, at a fork in the road, Patrick stopped abruptly, staring at an inscription carved into the stone. Mia's eyes widened as she recognized the markings. That's ancient Greek. It means, "Those who enter do not leave." It's a warning. Patrick swallowed hard. This wasn't in the scripts he had read, and the markings didn't look decorative. They were rituals, symbols of sacrifice and imprisonment. Mia continued to examine the inscriptions, now more determined to unravel the mystery of the place. But Patrick knew that these were more than just warnings. The labyrinth had a dark purpose, and it was then that Samuel captured something on his camera. A pale, deformed figure that appeared for a split second before disappearing again. A being that shouldn't exist. "There's something watching us. Something that lives here," Samuel whispered, showing the image to everyone. The group was shocked. This thing wasn't human, nor did it look like an ordinary animal. It was like a creature out of a nightmare, something that didn't belong on the surface. From that moment on, fear turned into absolute terror. As they walked forward, the whispers grew louder, almost like distant moans that echoed through the hallways. Patrick seemed increasingly lost, and the group increasingly desperate. Their flashlights were starting to fail, and time seemed distorted. How many hours had passed since they entered? Mia, determined to find a way out, began to mark the walls with chalk, trying to create a rudimentary map. But each time they returned, their marks seemed to disappear, as if the maze itself were erasing their attempts to escape. Enrique was on the verge of collapse, calling out for Lucia in every hallway. Samuel and Mia tried to remain calm, but they knew that something was very wrong with this place. Patrick, for his part, seemed consumed by guilt. "We should never have come here," he admitted, his voice shaking. "This place was sealed for a reason. There's something ancient and evil here." But there was no time for explanations. A heavy, dragging sound echoed ahead as if something large was moving in the darkness. The group retreated, but they were surrounded. They ran aimlessly, driven by pure survival instinct. Patrick led the way through a narrow tunnel, but when they reached the end, they were once again at a fork in the road that led nowhere. Samuel tried to use his phone, but there was no signal. The whispers turned into distorted laughter, while the pale figure of the creature appeared in the background, getting closer and closer, getting more and more real. They were being hunted. The creature moved unnaturally, its joints creaking like old bones. Enrique tried to confront it, but was dragged into the darkness in the blink of an eye. Its screams echoed throughout the maze, followed by an unsettling silence. Mia grabbed Patrick's arm, demanding answers. He finally confessed. The maze was a place of ancient sacrifice, where prisoners were abandoned to feed the creature. It was a secret that should have remained buried, but Patrick, greedy for an exclusive tour, had broken the pact with the local archaeologist. "This is my fault," he admitted, tears in his eyes. "I released this thing." Mia, Samuel, and Patrick kept going, trying to escape while the creature continued to pursue them. But with each step, the maze closed in tighter. With no way out, Patrick decided to do the only act of courage he had left: lure the creature away from the others. "Go on without me, I'll distract it," he shouted, running towards the darkness. The creature followed Patrick, and his screams of pain echoed, disappearing soon after. Samuel and Mia, now alone, used their last resources to find a way back to the entrance. Mia and Samuel ran like never before, driven by pure adrenaline. The maze, which had once seemed endless, now began to show signs of familiarity. The whispers died down, and they finally saw the dim light that marked the entrance. They emerged from the maze exhausted, dirty, and traumatized, with the knowledge that the others would not be so lucky. The sky of Athens had never seemed so distant and cold. They never heard from Lucia, Enrique, or Patrick again. The maze was closed by the authorities soon after, with express orders not to reopen it. Samuel and Mia knew they would never be able to tell the truth about what happened inside, but they also knew they would never forget the whispers, the shadows, and the terror they faced there. Mia returned to her academic life with a renewed respect for the ancient secret. Samuel, on the other hand, never took pictures in closed spaces again, haunted by the images he saw on that camera. And the maze, it remained there, beneath the ruins, awaiting the next brave or foolhardy soul who dared to challenge its depth.